Ever felt like you were parenting your own parents? Their needs always first, yours unseen? That quiet loneliness when your emotional anchors are adrift? We're not blaming, we're understanding. Signs, impacts, and a path to healing. Stay with me. Recognizing this is the first step to a profound shift. Perhaps you became the expert mood reader, the comforter you rarely had, the responsible one, the little adult. So, what if your childhood was shaped by emotionally immature parents? And how does that echo in your adult life today? Let's explore. When we talk about emotionally immature parents, we're not talking about intentionally malicious individuals. Often, these are parents who love their children, who provide for them in many practical ways. But emotional maturity is a different terrain altogether. It's the ability to manage one's own feelings, to empathize with others, and to allow for healthy emotional expression in a relationship. When this is lacking, distinct patterns can emerge. Let's explore a few common archetypes, not as rigid boxes, but as ways to understand a spectrum of behaviors. First, consider the emotional parent. This is the parent whose feelings dictate the atmosphere of the home. They might be prone to intense emotional reactivity, with moods that can swing dramatically. One moment, things are calm. The next, a storm of anger or frustration erupts, often over seemingly minor issues. Children in this environment learn to walk on eggshells, constantly scanning for emotional cues, trying to preempt the next outburst. Vulnerability is rarely shown by the parent in a healthy way. Instead, it's often raw, unfiltered emotional discharge. As the Attachment Project notes, these parents might show extremes of emotion, like explosions of anger, yet lack true empathy or the ability to be vulnerable with their children. Psych Central echoes this, describing high emotional reactivity, where parents might throw tantrums or even punish children for displaying their own, perfectly normal emotions. The child learns, quickly and painfully, that their own feelings are secondary, or worse, a trigger for parental distress. The message received is, your emotions are too much, or they are wrong. Then there's the driven or dismissive parent. This parent might appear outwardly successful, perhaps very focused on achievements, order, or practicalities. But emotionally, they can be distant, even aloof. They may struggle to connect on an emotional level, avoiding deep conversations or expressions of affection. Their love might be expressed through provision, but the child's inner world, their feelings and emotional needs, often go unacknowledged. They might not be overtly cruel, but there's a pervasive sense of emotional loneliness. The child might feel like a project or an extension of the parent's ambitions, rather than a unique individual with a rich inner life. The Attachment Project highlights this experience of emotional loneliness, where parents lack the ability to be emotionally present, warm, or nurturing. Psych Central describes this as emotional unavailability, where parents might seem disinterested, offer only criticism, or avoid comforting a child who is upset. The child of such a parent might internalize the belief that their feelings don't matter, or that seeking emotional connection is futile. And thirdly, we encounter the passive or rejecting parent. This parent is often deeply self-absorbed, their own needs and dramas taking precedence over everything and everyone else. They might be chronically overwhelmed, frequently complaining, or subtly, or not so subtly, positioning themselves as the victim, requiring their children to become their caretakers, confidants, or emotional support systems. Conversations are often one-sided, circling back to the parent's issues. There's a distinct lack of empathy for the child's experiences. The child learns that their role is to give, to soothe, to anticipate the parent's needs, often at the expense of their own. The Attachment Project points out that with such parents, the child always comes second, and they may use guilt or shame to get their way. Psych Central notes the profound lack of empathy, leading to behaviors like defensiveness, blame shifting, and a general inattentiveness to the child's world. The child can grow up feeling invisible, their own needs and desires deemed insignificant. These aren't mutually exclusive categories, of course. A parent might exhibit traits from more than one of these patterns or shift between them. But the common thread is a fundamental inability to consistently provide the emotional attunement, validation, and support that are crucial for a child's healthy development. The child, in turn, develops coping mechanisms, ways of surviving in an emotional landscape that feels unpredictable, unresponsive, or overwhelming. So, what happens when the child of an emotionally immature parent grows up? The patterns learned in childhood don't just vanish. They often replay, subtly or overtly, in adult relationships, career choices, and the relationship one has with oneself. There often comes a point, a kind of emotional reckoning, where the old ways of coping no longer serve, or the pain of the unaddressed wounds becomes too loud to ignore. This is the catalyst event, the moment the emotional dam begins to crack. It might not be a single dramatic event, but rather a slow burn of dissatisfaction, a recurring pattern that finally becomes undeniable. Perhaps you find yourself in yet another romantic relationship where you're constantly walking on eggshells, your needs dismissed, your feelings invalidated. It's a familiar ache, a dynamic that mirrors the one you had with a parent, and the repetition is suddenly, starkly clear. Or maybe it's a crisis at work, where you realize you've been overgiving, neglecting your own well-being to please a demanding boss, replaying an old script of seeking approval. It could be a period of intense stress, the birth of your own child, or even a seemingly innocuous comment from a friend or a therapist that lands with unexpected weight. A therapist might gently point out how you consistently prioritize others' emotional comfort over your own, a role you've played since childhood, a survival strategy that has outlived its usefulness. The common thread in these catalyst moments is a dawning awareness, a painful recognition that something is fundamentally misaligned. And then comes the unexpected action, the internal pivot. This isn't necessarily a dramatic external gesture. More often, it's a quiet, internal shift. Instead of doubling down on the familiar coping mechanisms, people-pleasing, withdrawing, self-blame, or trying even harder to win unwinnable emotional battles, a different voice emerges from within. A voice that asks, with genuine curiosity and perhaps a touch of weariness, why does this keep happening? Is there another way? This is the moment you might pick up a book on emotional healing, search for an article or a video like this one, or finally make that call to a therapist you've been considering. The unexpected action is the profound courage to turn inwards, to finally, truly look at the emotional blueprint of your upbringing, not with judgment, but with a deep yearning for understanding and change. It's the decision to stop running from the echoes of the past and, instead, to listen to what they're trying to tell you. This journey of recognition is rarely smooth. As you begin to connect the dots between your past and your present, a cascade of complex emotions can surface. It's like opening a long-locked room. There's dust, cobwebs, and forgotten things, some precious, some painful. One of the first reactions might be a form of denial or a conflicting sense of loyalty. A wave of guilt might wash over you. But they did their best, you might tell yourself. They worked hard. They provided for me. Am I being ungrateful or unfair by even thinking these thoughts? Memories of positive times, of genuine affection, can surface, making it harder to acknowledge the emotional gaps. This internal conflict is the loyalty bind, the child in you still yearning for approval, still wanting to protect the image of your parents, even if that image doesn't quite match your lived experience. It's a testament to the deep, primal bond between child and parent, a bond that makes seeing their limitations incredibly challenging. Then, often, comes the anger and the grief. Anger for the emotional support you craved but didn't receive, for the times you felt invisible or misunderstood. Anger for the burdens you carried, for the parts of your childhood that felt more like an apprenticeship in emotional caregiving than a time of carefree exploration. And beneath the anger, or alongside it, there's often a profound sadness. Sadness for the child who had to grow up too soon, who learned to suppress their own needs, who didn't feel consistently seen, safe, or soothed. This grief isn't just for specific incidents. It's for the childhood you might have wished for the emotional nourishment that was scarce. It's a mourning for what wasn't, and what could have been. But amidst this emotional turbulence, a quieter, more grounding voice can emerge. This is the echo of understanding and nascent acceptance, often a gentle aftershock. It might come from an insightful passage in a book, a validating comment from a supportive friend or partner, a moment of clarity in therapy, or simply a deep, internal knowing that arises from your own reflection. This voice whispers, your feelings are valid. Understanding these patterns isn't about assigning blame. It's about liberation. It's about understanding your own story so you can write a new chapter. This is the lifeline, the glimmer of light in the storm of conflicting emotions. It's the realization that you are not alone in this experience, and that acknowledging the pain is the first step towards healing it. As we navigate these complex feelings, it's helpful to step back and look at the bigger picture through different lenses. This isn't about intellectualizing away the pain, but about gaining a deeper, more compassionate understanding of the dynamics at play. Let's start with 3 reflective questions to gently probe these experiences. There are no right or wrong answers, only your truth. First, if your parents struggled to consistently meet your emotional needs, how did you learn to meet those needs for yourself? Or, perhaps, did you learn to ignore them, to tell yourself they weren't important? Second, what patterns, if any, from your childhood do you see unconsciously replaying in your adult relationships, your career choices, or even in your internal dialogue with yourself? And third, is it possible to honor any positive aspects of your parents or the idea of them, while still acknowledging the emotional gaps they may have left? Can these 2 realities coexist? Take a moment with those. Let them settle. Now, let's explore this through 3 distinct, yet interconnected, layers of analysis. The psychological lens. Dr. Lindsay C. Gibson, in her seminal work on emotionally immature parents, explains that these parents are often so caught up in their own preoccupations that they can't tune into their children's inner worlds. Children, in response, often develop specific coping roles. Some become internalizers, blaming themselves for their parents' emotional unavailability, believing they are somehow flawed or unlovable. They might become overly responsible, perfectionistic, and highly attuned to others' needs, hoping to finally earn the emotional connection they crave. Others become externalizers, acting out their frustration and pain through challenging behaviors, perhaps becoming rebellious or withdrawn. Both are desperate attempts to manage an unmanageable and often confusing emotional environment. The long-term consequences can be significant. Difficulties in forming secure attachments, challenges with setting healthy boundaries, a persistent fear of abandonment or criticism, chronic self-doubt, anxiety, or even depression. As Psych Central notes, this emotional neglect can indeed contribute to insecure attachment styles in adulthood. The Attachment Project's list of signs: the lack of empathy, the child's needs coming second, the emotional loneliness, the manipulation, the one-sided conversations, the emotional contagion, and the lack of emotional autonomy, all paint a vivid picture of the psychological landscape these children navigate. The philosophical and societal lens. Society often presents an idealized, almost sacred, image of parenthood. This can make it incredibly difficult for adult children to speak about, or even acknowledge to themselves, the emotional shortcomings of their parents. There's an unspoken taboo. Yet, emotional immaturity in parents often isn't a deliberate choice, but part of a larger, often invisible, cycle of intergenerational trauma. Parents who are emotionally immature were frequently raised by parents who were also emotionally unavailable or overly reactive. They are, in a sense, passing on what they learned and experienced, often unconsciously. Understanding this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it can contextualize it, shifting the focus from individual blame to a broader perspective on human frailty, learned patterns, and societal pressures that often discouraged emotional vulnerability, especially in previous generations. There's also a growing societal awareness now of the crucial importance of emotional intelligence and attuned parenting, a shift from previous models that might have prioritized discipline or material provision over emotional connection. The lens of applied mindfulness and compassion, inspired by Buddhist philosophy from a place of mindfulness, we can begin to observe these ingrained patterns, both our parents and our own reactive ones, without immediate judgment. We can notice the emotions that arise, the anger, the sadness, the longing, and hold them with a gentle awareness. This doesn't mean bypassing the pain or prematurely forgiving harmful behaviors. Rather, it's about creating a space where healing can begin. The Buddhist concept of dependent origination reminds us that all phenomena arise from causes and conditions. Our parents' emotional immaturity didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was shaped by their own experiences, their own wounds. Similarly, our responses to their behaviors were natural adaptations to our environment. With this understanding, we can begin to cultivate compassion for our younger selves who did the best they could with limited resources, and even, when we're ready, for our parents, who were likely acting from their own unhealed places. This compassion isn't about excusing or condoning harmful behavior. It's about freeing ourselves from the grip of resentment and pain, about finding a way to relate to our experiences that doesn't perpetuate suffering. As Thich Nhat Hanh suggests, understanding is the other name of love. If you don't understand, you can't love. Understanding the dynamics of emotional immaturity can be a profound act of self-love and, eventually, a pathway to a more liberated relationship with our past. So where does this leave us? If you've recognized patterns of emotional immaturity in your parents, and perhaps in your own responses to them, what now? The path forward isn't about dramatic confrontations or cutting ties, unless that's necessary for your well-being. It's about a gentler, more nuanced journey of reclaiming your emotional autonomy. First, there's the profound power of awareness and validation. Simply recognizing these patterns, naming them, and understanding that your emotional needs were and are valid can be transformative. It's like finally having a map for a territory you've been navigating blindly. This awareness isn't about blame, it's about clarity. It's about understanding that the emotional gaps in your childhood weren't a reflection of your worth, but of your parents' limitations. Then, there's the ongoing practice of self-compassion and boundary setting. This might involve learning to recognize and honor your own feelings, perhaps for the first time. It might mean setting gentle but firm boundaries with parents who still struggle with emotional maturity. It could involve seeking support from friends, from a therapist, from communities of others who understand. It's about slowly, steadily reclaiming your right to your own emotional reality. And finally, there's the possibility of integration and growth. This doesn't mean erasing the past or pretending it didn't hurt. It means finding a way to hold the complexity of your experiences, the pain alongside the love, the disappointment alongside the gratitude. It means recognizing that while you can't change your past, you can change your relationship to it. You can break the cycles that don't serve you. You can become the emotionally mature adult that perhaps your parents couldn't be, not just for others, but for yourself. If you're a parent yourself, this journey takes on an additional dimension. It becomes an opportunity to consciously choose a different path, to offer your children the emotional attunement and validation you might have missed. This isn't about being a perfect parent. That's neither possible nor necessary. It's about being a present one, willing to see your children as they are, to validate their feelings, to repair ruptures when they occur, and to grow alongside them. Remember, healing isn't linear. It's a spiral, revisiting old wounds from new perspectives, finding deeper layers of understanding and release. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of peace and moments of pain. That's not a sign of failure. It's the nature of the journey. If this exploration has resonated with you, I invite you to be gentle with yourself as you process it. Perhaps journal about your reflections or share them with someone you trust. Consider exploring resources like Dr. Gibson's books or seeking support from a therapist who understands developmental trauma. And remember, the very fact that you're engaging with these ideas, that you're willing to look at these patterns, is a profound act of courage and self-care. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to have your feelings validated. That was true then, and it's true now. And while you can't go back and give your younger self what was missing, you can begin, today, to offer yourself that same care, that same validation, that same unwavering presence. That, perhaps, is the most healing gift of all. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can, and that's more than enough.